Good evening. My name is Joe Sam Robinson, and it's my pleasure to have with us tonight Dr. Cecil Staton, a gentleman of great repute, general knowledge of the world, who's here to share some of that knowledge with us tonight. I can say that Dr. Staton is a PhD from Oxford. He's had many things he's done, including a time in the Georgia legislature and being college president and many other things. So tonight, Cecil, maybe you can share some of your wisdom about the way the world works, starting with politics. Now, if a young boy or lady is out there that wishes to go into politics, what's the way one gets started?
Well, I would probably first say don't do it unless you have to.
Is that right?
It's an arduous journey from any vantage point to climb up on the head of that needle. But I did do it for 10 years, 5 terms in the Georgia Senate. It meant a lot to me. I tried to do good things for the community I represented, which was Macon and Warner Robins and surrounding counties. It's a worthwhile thing. We desperately need good people with pure motives to get involved in the political process. We need that from the vantage point of both political parties. I served on one team, but there are 2, and you have to sort of decide where you feel like you can make a difference and where your views align up. But it is a tough thing to do. I would suggest one of the first things you can do is just get involved in your community. I mean, serve on various nonprofit organizations. Not necessarily, you don't have to be on a board, but just volunteer, get to know people, find out what's going on in your community. Engage with the political party apparatus. That's important. You may not like it. It's not always fun, but those political parties in the counties or area you might want to serve, they're very important. You're going to have to get to know the people. So attend those meetings, make yourself known, volunteer. Volunteer on a campaign for someone that you think is doing a great job. That's a great way to get started, to learn, because it is a complicated thing. And unfortunately, in today's world, the one common denominator is money. It costs a great deal to run a campaign. Advertising is expensive. They don't give it to you. And so you have to be prepared to get your message out. And so it's a process. I'm happy to talk about it to any degree you'd like, but we desperately need good people to get involved and stay involved, because it's not always the case that the people involved in politics do have pure motives, I have observed.
Yes, well, I think that's a profound observation. We have a lot of controversy. Things happen. People get offended. It's unusual that someone could sail through the political fray with no wounds of any type. That's pretty unusual. Well, let's see. Some people just jump in and do this. President Trump might be such a person, or maybe there are other people that do that. Let's see, former Senator Loeffler, is that?
Kelly Loeffler.
Now, I think what I'm saying is sometimes people have a lot of money or a lot of access to money right away, and they can just push the money button and announce, well, I've decided to, run for something.
Yes.
And I want an advisor that gets a share of the money, and then the advisor can say kind of what to do for his 10% or 50% or whatever it is.
Well, depending upon the level of office you're seeking, absolutely, money is incredibly important. I wish that were not the case, but it would be naive or foolish to suggest otherwise. It's very important, and if you don't have personal funds, then you have to have an ability to raise those funds, and that is not an easy thing to do. I will tell you, even as a state senator, I might not even have an opponent. I had to raise about $100,000 a year just to maintain the office and to be prepared to run, and because you didn't know if you'd have opposition in the next election. So You're right. There are people who are professionals in this field. They will happily take your money.
Yes, with
if you have
no problem.
political
No problem. Yes.
consultants. A lot of times they will do polling, even at the state senator level,
Right.
the state house level. Oftentimes they'll do polling. You'll learn about what are the hot button issues for your constituents, and you'll have to be prepared to talk about them and address your views and what you might plan to do with respect to those issues in your district or the area that you're going to serve. But it is unfortunately a very expensive thing to do. A statewide contest in the state of Georgia today, an entry level is probably around $10 million.
Really?
Just to get into the primary process and to be competitive. Now, there are always exceptions, and
Yes.
there are those interesting people who come along and they seem to buck a trend or to be able to maneuver around some of these normal obstacles that are there for
Yes.
the average person. But yeah, if you're a Donald Trump or if you're a Kelly Loeffler who comes from a very affluent family, and that's
Right.
certainly a head start. But I don't think, as much as I respect both of those individuals, I don't think political office should be something that can only be aspired to and obtained by people of significant wealth. We need people who can represent all aspects of our culture and society. And it's difficult, but it's a worthwhile journey for people to attempt to make it. I hope they will.
Now, term limits. Any
Yes.
thoughts about that? Many people would say that, once you're in, you're in, and you might not have a primary fight. And if you're in a district of one sort or another that's preponderantly on your side, then you can sort of rest easy and stay a long, long, long time. And there's some objections to that, and so people often advocate that. Do you have thoughts about term limits?
Well, of course, the districts are drawn in a particular way. It is influenced by the party that's in power. That's true whether it's Democrats or Republicans. And so gerrymandering is a very real word. It's a very real thing. Most districts, at least at the state house level and congressional level, are drawn with a particular viewpoint in mind. And so, yes, if you win the primary more often than not, and it's a Republican district or a Democrat district, you're going to win the district if it's aligned with your party. So I think, in my own view, term limits are probably something that should be taken more seriously. It's very hard to get elected officials
Yes.
to embrace or endorse term limits.
Yes. It's against their interests.
It is. And you spend so much time and energy and money
Yes.
acquiring the office, and then the offices are built around seniority. So, you really don't begin to have significant influence until you've been there a while. So given all of that, you're not going to find many people in elective office who are in favor of term limits. Pardon me. But I think there is something to be said for that, particularly when you look to Washington, where people have been in these jobs
Yes.
many, many years.
Right. Yes. And let's see the possibilities of enrichment in the office. So I think that's particularly true maybe in Washington and Congress, where the economic information is on the table, and congressmen have access to it, and they can do things with stock transactions or any kind of transactions. And in the state, famously, Georgia, I think the idea was the roads are going wherever the road construction is happening, and maybe you should buy a little bit of land there. You've learned the roads going through or whatever. And comments about that. I mean,
Well, it's unfortunate, and we do hear more and more about that today, particularly with social media. I don't want to imply that the majority of people in public office are scoundrels or are people who are taking advantage of the situation. I met many fine people who were doing it for the right reason. But I have to admit, I also met some
Yes.
who knew very well how to take advantage of the situation they found themselves in. And that's very unfortunate because it gives a bad name to the political enterprise, which we need to be virtuous in our country. Now, I'm also not naive. Human beings are not always virtuous.
Right.
But I think, for example, with Congress, I find it very hard to believe that it is still in any way legal for people to do stock trades based on information that may come into their possession as a result of their position. It is very hard for me to understand, and I was in the political world more or less for 12 years, very hard for me to understand how someone who begins with a job making X all of a sudden within a few years is worth 30 million, 50 million, 100 million, $500 million. There's no way you can explain that. I don't care, congressmen and U.S. senators make $176,000 or thereabouts. There's no way, and you know this, to take $176,000 a year, and even with the best stock picking you can do, you're not going to be worth $100 million at the end of a 20-year career. The math just doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
So I find it very offensive, pardon me, that members of Congress are not willing to rein this in, or candidly, that the Department of Justice doesn't, in fact, go after some of these individuals, because I think there are certainly ways to do that. It's a problem. It is very, very hard to take money out of politics, but we certainly need ethical people who are not going to view this as simply a means to acquiring great wealth at the expense of the people that they serve.
Now, one of the issues out there is the role of the Justice Department or Inspector Generals about keeping things straight, and the idea the civil service is going back to Teddy Roosevelt's era. They're not in the political fray. They're professional people, and they have an obligation just for the community good, etc. It looks like there's some change underway in a way that at least in Washington, the power of government is being used sort of political reasons on both sides, and so the people that are allegedly neutral purveyors of this power are being influenced one way or the other, and if they don't toe the line, then something will happen. And so the neutrality of the civil service seems to be difficult these days. And with the idea, particularly, that the civil service is a uniformly democratic institution. I don't know if you have any thoughts about that.
Well, it's troubling to me to see many of the things that have taken place in our country in recent years. And I don't think it's right if it's one party or the other. Certainly with respect to the Department of Justice, we should demand as Americans that there is fair play there, and that decisions are not made on a political basis. We don't go after people because of their political views. We don't go after people because they disagree with us. Now, I think, broadly speaking, the civil service in our country, in my view, has perhaps at times become too influential and too strong. I think a lot is deferred to them by the Congress. I mean, from that point of view, you could say the Congress is basically today not doing very much anyway. Yes. They defer a lot of their power to the president as well. But the civil service can become problematic when it is too much influenced by its own political ideology and makes decisions on that basis, and there are no checks and balances with Congress, or Congress is not engaged to the degree that there can be proper checks and balances. So that's one side of the problem. But in the specific instance of the Department of Justice, I think we absolutely must insist there on impartiality. The law is the law, the rule of law is the rule of law, and it should apply to everyone equally, and it should not be used by elected officials for either vendettas or what is commonly referred to today as lawfare. Now, we're in a situation now where under the Trump administration, there are things taking place where they're going after certain people, and it's being viewed as additional lawfare, when in fact some in the Trump administration simply believe they're just righting the wrongs where people went too far, and they need to be called into account for that, because what they did in effect was illegal or marred the justice system. That all has to be dealt with in the courts, and I suspect it will be over time. But I think we've gone a little bit too far down that road on both sides of the aisle, and it may for a while be very difficult to pull it back to where I think it really needs to be. No one should fear justice, or that justice will not be fair. It will be out of alignment based upon your political views. We cannot let that stand in this country. Freedom of speech is sacrosanct in my view, and we don't need government coming after people because of their political views.
Well, do you have thoughts about the so-called deep state? And so I think at least one can imagine that this is the view of, let's say, the Trump team, is that the fairness and justice are impossible in the United States because the whole alleged neutral apparatus, everything. I mean, people that work in the geography department, or people that know about road construction or whatever, this enormous army of several million people, several million people, they because of their economic circumstances and the way that they prosper in their job, they depend on the Democratic viewpoint, and thus they generally support those ideas. And as a result, it looks like President Trump in many ways is trying to bash that around. So he's dropping out of international organizations, doing this, doing that, trying to diminish the number of employees, government employees, saying that waste takes place, and there's this system there. And the complexities of doing something about that. Do you have thoughts about that? How hard that is to do? Is that appropriate? Should we have civil service protection? Should people protect their jobs? For instance, aid. Everybody with the whole organization was terminated. I mean, everybody lost their job. And your thoughts on those in regards to that?
Yeah, there has been a fairly significant decrease in federal employees during the first year of the Trump administration. I have a lot of respect for many of the civil servants. We use that term very broadly. The people I worked with in state government here in Georgia behind the scenes, we were part-time citizen legislators. And so when you're only there for 40 days for a session over the first 2 or 3 or 4 months of the year, you rely heavily on these people. You may have an idea, you may have a bill you want passed, you may be working on the state budget, but you're one person. And behind that is an army of people that you rely upon. The difference, though, is that if I had a different view, if I had a disagreement, if I had something that mattered to me as the member of the committee, as a chairman of a committee, at the end of the day, it was my view, candidly, that was going to prevail, and not the view of the person sitting at the table representing the state agency that may have had very strong opinions. I think the problem in Washington is things are, again, so massive. The budgets are enormous. No one can even comprehend the numbers. And so much of the legislation that's passed, it's done at a superficial level. And so much of the actual work is done in the more detailed, granular level. And that is dependent in many cases upon these individuals. I do think at the federal level, we have seen over time, certainly what I view to be a very strong bias on the part of the majority of portions of that civil service, or sometimes to a degree that is often referred to, the phrase you use, the deep state. There is a very clear effort made to push an ideology within that system, even if it's not the ideology of the prevailing political winds of the moment, as represented in the elected officials in the Congress. And so I think it is a problem. I think it's gotten out of hand. And so I am generally myself in favor of making sure that we pull that back as much as we can. And I do think the Trump administration is invested in that. But I think you'll also find it's very difficult to do.
Yes.
And even though they may want to do it in 4 years, how much of that can you actually do?
Yes.
And I do think, particularly when they come back and use the courts and the processes within the law that protect them as employees of the federal government, when they bring all of that to the table, it is very, very difficult to pull this monster back. But I do think it's become a monster, and I think we need a Congress that acts. We need a Congress that is engaged. They need to be able to read bills and not just get something 24 hours before they have to vote on it that may be 900 pages. The only people who know what's in the bill are those civil servants who actually wrote it.
Yes.
And I think that's a horrible system, but I think that's where we are. And so I am sort of in sympathy with efforts to try to rein some of that in.
Well, we have quite a country, do we not? We have many things happening around the world, and certainly President Trump is doing things that are not common. I mean, a lot of uncommon things happening, and the world order seems like it's getting bounced around a little bit. What I might consider the world order, or other the nation states, how things function after World War II. We have this sort of world government in a way. We're trying to keep things pretty benign, and the world tensions are spilling out there, aren't they? I mean, I wonder if our political establishment, including everyone, is able to navigate these tensions that seem to be rising in different places, and often instigated by the United States, I would say that, as a purveyor of world tension.
It's concerning. I mean, obviously, when you have a leader in China who is not elected under the sense we understand elections, and so is there for years on end, you have Putin in Russia, who again, even though there are elections, we can discuss how real those elections are.
Yes.
He's there in perpetuity as long as he wants to. He's 70 years old now, I believe. But here we have to go through our political turmoil every 4 years, every 2 years in the Congress or the House. So it's very difficult. And so we do see what appear to us to be these wild swings. You couldn't imagine a wilder swing than from what we were doing under Biden,
right?
If he's even aware of it at times,
right.
To where we have a Trump who is totally engaged and has an opinion on everything, and has a strong viewpoint, which I think, frankly, over the last 4 years he was out of office, they were sitting there plotting most of this during that time, so that he was much more prepared coming into office a year ago. So I am concerned about some of that stuff. I don't profess to be a true expert on foreign policy, but I am concerned about it. I mean, what we've just seen in Venezuela, some of the comments that have been made. I do think I understand and respect the need for us to be concerned about our hemisphere and the influence of China and Russia, particularly in Central and South America. But I am also, given my own personal background, you mentioned that I did doctoral work at the University of Oxford and lived there for several years. I'm very concerned about Europe.
Yes.
I'm concerned about our Western relationships, NATO, where some of this is going. And I think it's very troubling to me that many of the values and things that we profess to hold dear in the United States appear in some respects to be no longer of the same value to our European allies. I'm concerned about where that's going, particularly with respect to free speech. I think we're seeing evidence of, alarming to me at least, crackdowns on freedom of speech in the UK and Germany and in some other countries in Europe. I think this war between Ukraine and Russia, I actually applaud President Trump's attempts to push that to a conclusion and to get that ended. I'm very concerned about that. I actually think, probably, this is just my view, but one of the biggest foreign policy blunders of the modern era of our country was what happened after the fall of the Soviet Union, that we did not find a way to make Russia an ally. I mean, we may not like Putin, we may not like the way they do elections, we may not like many aspects about the country, but it is to a certain extent a Christian country, and it is a country with enormous resources, and I do not think it serves our national interests when our foreign policy has pushed Russia and China closer together, and we have somehow isolated and allowed some of these things to take place. So those are all complicated issues, but I do think foreign policy seems to be something President Trump is focused on at the moment. Many people believe perhaps to a greater degree than is good as we head into the midterms, because Americans seem to have other interests at the moment than what's taking place in Caracas.
Yes.
They're interested in what's happening on Main Street and in their bank accounts,
Yes.
and with their jobs, and so and with the costs of living. So all of these things are important, and we move into another cycle, another interesting time for our country this year as we approach the midterm elections.
Well, there's a lot of chaos, a lot of boiling pots in different places, and having the ability to live in that world is complicated for anyone, any major politician, any country, sort of the penalties of nation states. So we have, on the global viewpoint, we have the tensions that arise between insiders and outsiders, part of the human condition. And so you're the other country, this is this country, we normally fight. And the idea is, well, we can't fight now, or we, in at least World War II, persuaded people not to do it, the nuclear age, the possibility of human extinction, all of those things. And so the world order was put together to sort of preserve that, or that was the ideal. And the situation that took place with communism, if you want to say that, or Russia, we were going to kill each other, we're very close to it. And it appeared that their side was going to win, if one can say that. And then, bingo, we did. We won. So America prevailed. Our viewpoints were there. The world was at our feet, shall we say, 30 years ago or so. Mm-hmm. And then somehow that hegemony has been diminished. Our moral, relationships have been diminished. How do we handle this environment where it looks like we've thrown a lot of things away in the middle of all this. And I think on the left, they threw things away, and certainly Trump is throwing things away on the right. And I don't know how we make all that work out. You mentioned, well, can't we be friends with Russia? But Russia has been, their whole national ideal has been terribly nipped. They've got a very difficult situation they live in. They've got only 150 million people. They're surrounded by Japan, China, the Islamic countries, the NATO, and the U.S. across the North Poles, and they've got very skimpy resources, and they're trying to act in their tradition of being the powerful country and doing that, and they're going over red lines. They're crossing lines. I don't know how one can easily deal with that, and how do you handle that? And they're could be a question, that the might makes right, which is traditionally the way things work. And so, for instance, if we're the big country, we're going to take Greenland away. Don't get me started on Greenland. We're going to just go up there and just take the place away, and we're the big boys, and we can do what we want to, or anywhere. That no matter what you could say right is, whatever the moral viewpoint is, which is often complicated to discern, but that's a little spooky to me. Just that kind of arrangement. And of course, maybe that's the way the other side has always played the game. And is it right for us to play the way they say, the way they always play, and particularly with our complicated national ideals? I mean, so what is an American? Someone that's powerful or moral, or can you be both? I'll ask that question.
Yeah.
Well, Cecil, we're about through with our little talk right now. Do you have any comments to offer the world? Any chance of getting back into politics?
Well, I don't think so. I'm essentially retired, and once you've walked off the political stage, it's very hard to climb back on.
Well, Trump did it. He didn't exactly walk off, though.
No, he didn't. I don't think he ever left. But no, I admire people who do it, and I hope good people will continue to do it. It is a tough time to be in that game. We are in a polarized time for our country. And I don't like that. I'm not comfortable with that. I have friends who are on the other side of the political spectrum than I sit, but I don't think that we can't be friends, or we can't have discussions, or that we can't try to find common ground. But that is not the way of politics today. It's very, very isolated, and I think that's why a lot of people get out of it.
Yes.
Because when I started, I could go out to dinner with one of my colleagues across the aisle. We could have at least fellowship and talk about the issues, and I respected the fact that they were trying to represent their constituents as I was mine.
Right. Yes.
Today, I don't think that happens a lot.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of animosity, and I hope we can find some way to try to build those bridges and find compromise, which is viewed by some as a dirty word, but in our political process, at least, it's essential to get anything done.
Well, we can hope that will be the facts of the future, and we'll be watching with eager eye as to what the world will bring forth. So thank you for your appearance today.
Thank you.
Thank you.